Hi and welcome to Steve's Kitchen. We're going to finish off this series of 4th of July celebrations with that fantastic classic, an American apple pie. Now when the early European settlers came to America there were no apples, so they had to plant and wait for the apple trees to grow, and that took many years. When they came they made apple pies, and these were a wonderful celebration of a fantastic fruit. Something they did not do was bring the Bramley apple, the cooking apple, over to America. And the cooking apple is a fantastic apple for apple pies. If you can get hold of them, I urge you to try them. They're the size of 3 apples like this. Now, if Eve had had these in the Garden of Eden, she'd have had to invent a cooker before she could have tempted Adam to eat them, because they are not something that you can eat uncooked. But when they're cooked, they're to die for. So if you can get Bramley apples, give them a try. And if you've a neighbour with a Bramley apple tree, try and get your fence to grow around their Bramley apple tree so that you can get them. Now, have you ever heard of scrumping? Look it up if you haven't. It's a great pastime when we were kids. Now, a traditional American apple pie is usually made with at least 2 or maybe 3 varieties of apples. Now, I've got a Fuji here, a Granny Smith and a Jazz apple. And I'm just going to take the apples, I'm going to sort of top and tail them. And then with a paring knife, I'm just going to hand peel these. I then want to cut my apple into quarters. And that allows me then just to take the core out of the apple. And then we're just going to take our apple and just cut our quarters into slices. Now it's a good idea because I'm doing at least 8 to 10 apples. As you're doing the apples, take a fresh lemon and just squeeze some of the juice into the apples. And do this in intervals, and then just coat the apples over with the lemon juice to stop them from going brown. So now I'm just going to add some sweetness into these apples. I'm going to add a cup of light brown sugar. Now you can use white sugar. I just don't have white sugar in the house generally. A ½ teaspoon of cinnamon powder. And I like to grate a little fresh nutmeg in there as well, but that's optional. If you've got it, use it. About maybe 1/4 teaspoon. And a 1/4 teaspoon of salt. Now the salt will just help draw the moisture out of the apples. Now we're going to get our hands in there now and coat this over. Beautiful smell coming off those apples now, cinnamon and sugar. And now the last thing I want to add to this is 2½ tablespoons of corn flour. Now, cornstarch or corn flour, you can actually use just plain flour. I just want to sprinkle that over the top so it doesn't clump. And then again, get your hands in there and sort of toss that through until the flour is completely coated. Now what the corn flour is going to do is, as the sauce from these apples is drawn out and baked in the pie, it's going to thicken that sauce up beautifully. And there you have it. Let's just set that aside now while we make the pie base and the crust. Now I'm going to be making my pastry by hand, guys. You can make it in a food processor. I do find it makes it a little tougher, and it's so simple to make by hand. I've got 2½ cups of flour in here. That's about 350 grams of flour. So I'm going to dispel a few myths here as well, guys. I've got 8 ounces of butter, room temperature butter, and that's about 225 grams, and I'm just dropping that into my flour. Now, people use cold butter. There is no point at all. You've then got to warm the butter up with your hands in order to make it mix in with the flour. So we're just using room temperature, nice soft butter. Now, if it's cold butter, you're going to have to do it for much longer, which is going to give you tougher pastry, and you're not going to get quite such good results. So soft butter is the way to go. And we just sort of push the butter and the flour together until we get a nice, loose, crumbly pastry. Now lastly, I'm just going to add a couple of tablespoons of Castor Sugar or Superfine sugar. And I'm just taking a 1/4 teaspoon of salt in there as well. And then very lightly just mix that through. Now another great reason for not using a food processor is I don't have a food processor to wash up now. I'm just taking some ice cold water and I'm putting 4 tablespoons into my pastry. And then using a blunt knife, I just want to cut that through. Again, we don't want to overhandle the pastry, so I'm cutting the ice water in. And you'll see now that's starting to draw the pastry together. I'm going to add another 3 tablespoons, so upwards to about 8 tablespoons maximum, but I'll put another 3 in there now. And you can see now that the pastry is starting to cling together in little clumps. And it's at this point we can take our hand in and just gently start pulling the pastry together, just squeezing it together. Now what I'm going to do at this point is I'm going to break my pastry into 2 parts, one for the base and one for the top. Then I'm going to take one piece of pastry and I'm just going to wrap it in some cellophane wrap. And I'm going to pop that in the refrigerator for at least half an hour to let that chill completely down. I just push it down a little bit flat. Now my second piece of dough, I'm just going to cut it up into 1/3 and 2/3 pieces. Now you can chill this straight down, guys. You haven't got to do what I'm doing, but it's a little bit of fun. I'm going to be taking some gel food colouring, and with the risk of making the dough go a little tough, I'm going to add a couple of spots of red to the larger piece and a spot of royal blue to the smaller piece. And I'm going to take my piece of pastry and I'm just going to try to work this colour in there without stretching out the gluten. So I've got to be careful. We do risk now turning this into a slightly tougher dough, but because it's for a celebration, I'm happy to do it. So there, I've added red to this piece of dough and blue to this one. Now guys, I wouldn't recommend this for a normal apple pie, but it's a bit of fun for the 4th of July. I'm now going to wrap these ones and chill them down in the fridge with the other piece. Now I brought my piece of pastry out of the fridge here and I'm just going to roll it out. I put it on a floured surface and I want to roll it out to a nice circle. The overall size of our pastry wants to be a little bigger than our pie dish. Now because this is a short crust pastry, it is a little crumbly. Don't worry if it breaks a little bit because it's easy to ease back together. Now I'm just going to roll this pastry over a rolling pin like this. And then I can use the rolling pin to gently lay the pastry over the pie dish. And we want to just ease the pastry into the pie dish without stretching it. Now you can just use a pair of kitchen shears just to trim the edge off this pastry. We want to leave it a little proud. We want a nice thick edge to the pie. Okay, now I've got my pie base there and my apples from earlier. I'm going to lift these apples and just drop them into the pie base. But let's not forget all the juices that have come off from the apple. We're just going to pour that in there. And the flour that I put in there will allow that to set beautifully and not make the bottom of the pie too soggy. Now I'm just going to spot the top of this pie with some bits of unsalted butter. Now guys, I'm winging it a bit here because this is the first time I've done this red, white and blue version of this apple pie. So bear with me, we're going to have some fun now and make this look festive. Now I've just taken my red pastry in exactly the same. I'm rolling it out to a round, although I'm not going to be covering the pie completely with this. With my blue pastry, I'm less worried about getting around because I'm actually going to be cutting stars out of this. So I'm just rolling it out randomly. This blue pastry has come out really nice. It's got like a sort of tie-dye effect on it. Now if you've got a star-shaped cutter, you can just now push it down and cut out some stars for our stars and stripes. Now I'm not putting a full pie crust on here, so I'm going to use a little egg wash. That's egg and water mix, and I'm just going to brush it around the outside of my pie crust. Then I'm going to take my red pastry. Now I've cut it into nice stripes and I'm just going to lay it across the pie like this. And I'm leaving a little bit of a gap between each red stripe. So this is a bit like the lattice work that you see on top of a pie often, but I'm doing it in red stripes. So the upper part of this pie, I'm just coming across sort of 2/3 of the way across. Now with my blue, I've got my blue stars, and I'm just going to pop the blue stars randomly, even going to let them overlap occasionally, randomly in this corner here. And I've also done some smaller blue stars, which I'm just going to fill in some of the gaps with. And now around the edge here, and bear in mind guys, I'm kind of winging this, I'm trying to sort of fold the pie under and get a decent thick crust to this apple pie. So really, you're just kind of winging it. And there we go, guys. There is my American Stars and Stripes apple pie. Guys, I hope you think I've done all right with that. I'm happy to hear your comments down below. So now we're going to pop that in a preheated oven. I don't want it too hot. It's going to be about 170 degrees Celsius because it's going in for about an hour. That's 225 degrees Fahrenheit. But before it goes in, I want to give it a good egg wash coating. I want all the pastry to be coated in egg wash. Now this is quite a long and slow bake, and it's going in for about an hour. If the edges start to brown too much, you can protect them with some sort of silver foil over the edges there. But it's quite a long bake because we want the apples inside to stew nicely. And there you have it, guys. There is my Stars and Stripes apple pie. It's come out of the oven. I think it's looking quite cool. I don't want to go any darker than that. I'm going to let that completely cool down on the side. It's piping hot at the moment. Now I couldn't quite fit the full 13 stripes and all the stars on there, but guys, can you remember what the 13 stripes stand for? I certainly can, or at least I probably can remember 8 of them. Let me give it a go. We've got Delaware, Pennsylvania, Georgia, we've got Maryland, Connecticut, Massachusetts, South Carolina, North Carolina, Georgia, Rhode Island, New York. Oh, I'm sure I've probably missed one of them out. Anyway, guys, comments down below if you can remember. Well, there is my American apple pie, my 4th of July apple pie. It's been a lot of fun doing these videos this week, and I'd really appreciate your comments down below. We'll start a new series of videos next week. I've got some exciting things coming up. I'd enjoy your comments and your support. Be good. See you in the next video. As always, my link to subscribe is above, and there's a couple of videos up there. I didn't even get to try this apple pie yet. We've got to save it. We've got some guests coming round, and we'll be trying it then. But thank you for joining me again. Love to hear your comments. See you next time.